Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta Additional Pastimes Around the World, 1967 to 1969 and 1972 to 1975. Additional Pastimes of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, by Satsvarup Das Goswami. Chapter 10, A World Tour, Part 3. February 17th, 1975. After 7 full days in Mexico City, Prabhupada was ready to leave for Caracas. Everyone gathered in the temple to hear his last talk. As usual, Hridayananda Maharaj, sitting at the feet of Prabhupada's Vyasasan, translated his talk. "We have left our home and our father," Prabhupada began, "and we are in this fallen material world, and we are suffering too much. It is exactly like a very rich man's son who leaves home for independence and wanders all over the world unnecessarily taking trouble. A rich man's son has nothing to do. His father's property is sufficient for his comfortable life. Still, as we have got examples now in the Western countries, many rich men's sons become hippies, leaving home, and unnecessarily take trouble. Our position as living entities within this material world is exactly like that. We have voluntarily come into this material world for sense enjoyment. And in sense enjoyment we have forgotten our Supreme Father, God. The material nature's duty is to give us simply miserable condition of life. Krishna Bhuliya Jiva Bhoga Vancha Kare Pashate Maya Tare Japatiya Dhare means, as soon as the living entity wants to enjoy life without Krishna, without God, immediately he becomes under the clutches of Maya. So, this is our position. We are under the control of Maya, and we can get out of it also, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etang tarantite. Anyone who surrenders unto me, he gets out of the control of Maya. We are therefore preaching all over the world Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, and teaching the people how to surrender to Krishna, and thus get out of the clutches of Maya. We have no other desire or ambition besides this. We plainly say, here is God. You surrender unto him. You always think of him. Offer your obeisances. Then your life will be successful. But the people in general, they are exactly like madmen. Simply for sense gratification, they are working so hard day and night. So, devotees are very sorry to see their plight. Prahlad Maharaj said that, I am very sorry for these persons. Who are they? Shoche tato vimukha chetasa indriyarta maya sukhaya bharam udvahato vimudhan. These rascals, vimudhan, that have created a civilization, gorgeous civilization. What is that? Just like in your country, a gorgeous truck for sweeping. The business is sweeping, and for that they have manufactured a gorgeous truck. The sweeping can be done by hand. There are so many men. But they are loitering in the street, and a huge truck is required for sweeping. It is creating huge sound, and it is very dangerous also. But they are thinking this is advancement of civilization. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj said, Maya Sukhaya, just to get relief from sweeping, but there is no relief. They have got other troubles. But they are thinking, now we haven't got to sweep, it is a great relief. Similarly, a simple razor can be used for shaving, but they have got so many machines, and to manufacture the machines, so many factories. So in this way, if we study item by item, this kind of civilization is called demoniac civilization, ugra karma. Ugra karma means ferocious activities. So, there is no objection for the material comforts, but actually you have to see whether they are comforts or miserable conditions. Therefore, our human form of life is meant for saving time to develop our Krishna consciousness. It is not meant for wasting unnecessarily, because we do not know when the next death is coming. And if we do not prepare ourselves for the next life, because at any moment we can die, then we have to accept a body offered by the material nature. Therefore, I wish that all you who have come to join this Krishna consciousness movement live very carefully, so that Maya may not snatch you from the hand of Krishna. We can keep ourselves very steady simply by following the regulative principles and chanting minimum 16 rounds. Then we are safe. So, you have got some information about the perfection of life. Don't misuse it. Try to keep it very steadily, and your life will be successful. So, if we follow the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds, then our life will be perfect. I think this instruction you will follow. That is my desire. Thank you very much. Tonio Fernandez. The last time Prabhupada spoke was in the morning. He said, I wish all of you will go back to Krishna. I remember those words very nicely because I understand that all the desires of a pure devotee are fulfilled. So I think his desires must be fulfilled. But when Prabhupada left, I personally felt alone because I was practically with him only for 8 days. It was a different style of life. Nanda Prana. When Prabhupada was leaving the house, he was coming down the stairs, and they helped this one boy, Govinda Das, who was 4 years old, to make a garland. He was waiting for Srila Prabhupada downstairs. When Prabhupada came down, this boy was going to put the garland, but he was too little and could not reach Prabhupada's head. So Hridayananda Maharaj took the child and lifted him up so that Govinda Das was going to put the garland on Prabhupada's head. But before he could put it, Prabhupada took his hands and made the boy put the garland on himself. Roberto Ruiz. After coming from Chapultepec Park and chanting his rounds, then Srila Prabhupada went away. It was wonderful because all the devotees went out. When the car was leaving the temple, it looked like a rug, like a carpet. All the devotees were offering obeisances. It was ecstatic. They were waiting for Prabhupada to come again, but it wasn't possible. Tonio Fernandez. When we start talking about Prabhupada's visit to Mexico, we remember a lot of things. And when we start talking, we can go on talking, and we can remember a lot of things. Talking about Srila Prabhupada is very hard because really we can't know him in 8 days. The 8 days passed so quickly, like a minute. It was the best thing that ever happened in our life to meet with Srila Prabhupada and his devotees. The whole mercy was given to me also because I stayed closely. The devotees were struggling always to see Prabhupada, the Matajis, the Brahmacharis, but I also stayed with him. When Prabhupada left, all of us stood at the gates, looking at the car, and the atmosphere was very sad. I can't tell by words, but only feel it. It is a feeling of separation. When one saves When one serves the spiritual master, one serves Krishna. It was the most sad farewell for me. Caracas, February 18th, 1975. It was late at night. For years, the devotees had been hoping Prabhupada would visit. Every year, they heard he was coming, but every year, he didn't. But now he had come. In the temple, conch shells sounded, and the kirtan was uproarious. Because of the government restrictions, the devotees had not publicized Prabhupada's arrival, which didn't seem to matter, since the temple was more crowded than ever before, with dozens of guests, a reporter, and a television news crew with bright floodlights and cameras. The leading book distributor in the temple washed Prabhupada's feet, as Prabhupada sat on a raised vyasasana overlooking 100 persons. The devotees, many of them from other countries in South America, and the guests, friends, seekers, and the curious, filled every inch of floor space. As Srila Prabhupada sat, he beheld the two golden forms of the Gaur Nitai deities. He made obeisances to them when he first entered the room, and now he spoke of their mercy. "You are very fortunate," he said. "These two Prabhus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, are present with us tonight. There is a song you can follow," and he began to sing. Parama Karuna Pahu Dui Jana Nitai Gaurachandra. Nitai Gaurachandra. No instruments or voices accompanied his singing, which carried through the still room. Everyone sat in hushed silence, fixed on him as he sang alone. Sabha Avatara Sara Shiromani Kevala Ananda Kanda. Now the Prabhupada was in Caracas, seeing so many devotees and seeing Gaur Nitai presiding from their simple altar. He was most impressed and moved by the mercy of Gaur Nitai. These two lords, he sang, were the essence of all incarnations and the most merciful. In this particular incarnation, the Lord said he would go everywhere to distribute his love, and here was the proof. They had come so far from their original place in Nadia, in Bengal. Prabhupada himself was traveling far. Even on this day, he had already traveled hundreds of miles. And yet the two Prabhus were already here waiting, with arms upraised, shining effulgently. They had come to this distant place, Venezuela, and Prabhupada was deeply touched at how they had extended their mercy to the whole world. Tears glided down his cheeks, and his voice broke. The devotees became wonderstruck, appreciating Prabhupada's vision of the two deities on the altar. Prabhupada wasn't thinking that he was in South America with some Spanish-speaking people, but he was seeing his beloved lords and feeling how they were delivering love of God to the fallen souls. Seeing Prabhupada's tears and hearing his choked voice, the people themselves became thrilled to behold genuine transcendental ecstasy. It was like the ecstasy of a Krura on his way to Vrindavan. A Krura had been thinking of Krishna the whole time he was traveling, but when he arrived in Vrindavan and saw the actual imprints of Krishna's feet in the dust, he suddenly became mad in ecstasy and fell to the ground crying, "How wonderful!" Similarly, Srila Prabhupada was always living within the mercy of Gaur Nitai and their mission, but suddenly seeing them with arms upraised in their particular place, where they were encouraging the people of South America to take to this simple, joyful process, a process which does not even require knowledge or understanding, but simply to chant Krishna's holy names. Seeing this mercy, Prabhupada himself was far more impressed than anyone by the mercy of these two Prabhus. Although the deity, the temple, and the devotees had only become manifest through Prabhupada's preaching, the fact that they were all here, flourishing before he had ever come, moved him to a visible ecstasy of love as the servant of the Lord. He was awed by the potency of Gaur Nitai. The Caracas temple was situated on a hill overlooking the city. From his garden, Prabhupada, sitting in his rocking chair, could see the whole city of Caracas, the city of eternal spring, spread out before him, shimmering in the valley below. Beyond the city loomed a tall green mountain. It was a spectacular vista. As the morning air warmed, Srila Prabhupada removed his sweater and placed it on the branches of a nearby tree. He sat, chanting on his beads. Later he took off his shirt, placing it on another branch, and sat, basking in the sunshine, chanting. Prabhupada's traveling servant and secretary were glad to see him sitting so restfully in the sunshine, since he traveled rapidly and his body was advanced in years. After only a few days here, he would quickly visit Miami, Atlanta, Dallas, New York, London, Tehran, Bombay, Calcutta, and then preside over the international gathering of his disciples in Mayapur. After Mayapur, Prabhupada would go to Vrindavan for the grand opening of the Krishna Balaram temple. In connection with the Mayapur festival and the Vrindavan temple opening, many matters were still pending, and all over the world, ISKCON affairs and devotees were awaiting Prabhupada's scrutiny and direction. But Prabhupada's traveling servants thought that if for a few days he received no mail or phone calls, then that was good. They were satisfied simply seeing their spiritual master sitting and chanting in the sunshine. Jagajivana. There was a little balcony above Srila Prabhupada's garden. I would go and sit there and just look at Prabhupada because in that way my eyes could become purified. I was also thinking how in Navadvip Dham there is a place called Nrisinghapalli, where Lord Nrsimhadev rested on his way back to the spiritual world after killing Hiranyakashipu. Did the Lord need to rest? No, but it was part of his pastime, and his devotees reciprocate with the Lord according to the Lord's desire. So I thought, if my spiritual master wants to sit and overlook the city in a relaxed mood, let me worship him in that setting. The devotees of Caracas were delighted that Prabhupada was gazing upon their city. They felt that he was blessing the poor-hearted people of Caracas just by glancing down upon their homes as he chanted. While Prabhupada was present at their temple, the Sankirtan devotees of Caracas continued going down daily to the city to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books to the conditioned souls. But just knowing he was there, looking over the city, gave them strength. In Caracas, Srila Prabhupada took his morning walk in a nearby park, Parque del Este. When he passed a relic of an old ship, the Colón, dating back to Christopher Columbus, Prabhupada asked to go on board. The boat tour had not yet opened, however, and they could only view the ship from a distance. A devotee picked lilies from the lake and gave them to Srila Prabhupada. From nature's study, Prabhupada said, we can see one tree is producing a particular type of fruit and flower. There is no revolution, it is standard. But these people, because they have no standard, they change every moment, every year. Nature's way is that the sun is rising from the eastern side, and that is standard. Prabhupada chuckled. They will say, let the sun rise from the north. It is childish, simply childish. Eastern philosophers, Western philosophers, what are these different philosophies? Philosophy is philosophy. While walking, Prabhupada spoke of the wonders of Mount Sumeru, the celestial mountain of the demigods. On the top of the Sumeru hill, he said, there is a big tree, and the juice, after falling down, turns into a river of mango juice. And the blackberries, they are just like the bodies of elephants, but with small seeds. They also turn into rivers like the rivers of the jambu fruit. Both banks of the river being moistened by this juice and dried by air and sunshine, it becomes gold. And that gold is used by the denizens of heaven for their ornaments, helmets, bracelets, and belts. But where is gold here? Just paper. They cannot make even gold coins. Everything is reducing to poverty. In our childhood, we have seen gold coins and silver coins. Now there is no such thing. Plastic and paper. As he walked, Prabhupada observed the beautiful park. Yes, he said, it is a nice garden. Devotees crowded near Prabhupada as he walked, sometimes too near, almost bumping him. Sri Dayananda Maharaj translated questions from the devotees. Sri Dayananda Maharaj. He wants to know the relation between the Vedic culture of India and the cultures that were originally in Latin America. There seems to be some similarity. Prabhupada. Formerly, the whole world was Vedic culture. They have deteriorated. In India only a glimpse is still maintained. Prabhupada then told them how Lord Ramchandra had once come to Brazil, then the headquarters of Ravan's brother and a part of Ravan's kingdom. The demons had brought Ramchandra there to kill. They wanted him to lean his head over, and when he would do so, they were going to cut off his head. But Ramchandra told the demoniac soldiers, "I don't know what you mean, you'll have to show me." So they all bent their heads over, and he immediately cut off their heads. Prabhupada said this all happened in Brazil. Moving further into the park, Prabhupada suddenly heard the loud screeching of birds. "Why they are angry?" he asked. Srutakirti replied, "They're in a cage." "Only birds?" asked Prabhupada. The local devotees replied that it was a whole zoo. Sri Dayananda Maharaj. He has a question that in Latin America there is much belief or superstition in a so-called lost city of Atlantis. It's very famous all over the Western world that there was a lost civilization called Atlantis that fell down into the ocean. Prabhupada simply replied, "Maybe." They approached a large pool recessed about 20 feet into the ground and surrounded by protective fencing. Inside lay 2 crocodiles. In this material world, Prabhupada remarked, the conditioned souls are always found in pairs. As Prabhupada and the devotees walked up to the rail, one crocodile opened his mouth very wide. Prabhupada remarked, "Don't you see? He's inviting. He's saying, 'Just one of you come down here.'" Prabhupada laughed. "He's inviting us for dinner." When a devotee asked if industry and technology could be used in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said yes, it could continue, but practically it had no real use. He gave the example that a man could sit on the ground just as easily as he could sit on a bench. But to make the bench, so much time had to be spent manufacturing. If the telephone and telegraph and television are used in propagating Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said, then it is all right. But they are not doing that. We are utilizing the modern press facilities for printing Vedic scriptures, but they are utilizing the press for sex literature, birds' philosophy. One devotee said that the world was beset with so many problems, like overpopulation and food shortage, and he asked for the Krishna-conscious solution to these problems. "Produce food," said Prabhupada, "but you are producing bolts and nuts, so try to eat them. You are producing motor tires and bolts, so eat them." When Hridayananda Maharaj translated this phrase, the Caracas devotees laughed heartily. To them it seemed especially appropriate, since they knew Caracas as a town polluted by the automobile industry. "The energy is spoiled," Prabhupada said. "Everyone is engaged in manufacturing motor parts." The devotees on the walk were particularly concerned with world problems, and they asked Prabhupada how a Krishna-conscious devotee approached the problem of food shortage. Sri Dayananda Maharaj suggested, Prabhupada, the food relief program you started in India could also be used in other countries where there are economic problems. Prabhupada, why not? But prasadam, not ordinary food. From all our centers you can distribute food, prasadam, because that prasadam means they will gradually become Krishna conscious. Otherwise, if you give them ordinary food, they will get strength and they will increase their sex desire, that's all. Someone asked what would happen to the geographic features of the earth as the age of Kali advanced, and also what would be the effect of taking oil and gold from the earth. Prabhupada, I think I have explained this. You have got a short duration of life, say 50 or 60 years. So instead of contemplating what will happen to this world, you chant Hare Krishna and go back to home, back to Godhead. Don't consider what will happen to this world. The nature will take care of it. You don't puzzle your brain with these thoughts. Use whatever time you have got in your possession and go back to home, back to Godhead. You cannot check it. So the best thing is to mold your life and go back to home, back to Godhead. Fly in your own machine instead of thinking what will happen. It will happen because the people will go on with their rascal civilization, and the natural consequences will be there. But better you take advantage of whatever time you have got and become fully Krishna conscious and go back to home. Each evening, a small group of intellectuals and seekers gathered to talk with Srila Prabhupada. The first evening, a professor came. Prabhupada began saying that people are making a huge frenzied endeavor just to secure money in the daytime and to have sex and to sleep at night. The professor, speaking through Sri Dayananda Maharaj as translator, replied, I do know that it is not the aim of life just to spend money on your family, go to bed, and have sex. But it is part of life. Srila Prabhupada, that I know also, everyone knows. But beyond that, there must be some aim of life. Professor, but I think there should be some kind of humbleness. Prabhupada, no, humbleness is of course a good qualification, but the humbleness you will find in animal also. He is very humble, and if you cut his throat, he will not tell anyone. So, humbleness, that is another thing. But what should be the aim of life? What is the actual aim of life? If we forget the aim of life and simply become humble like the ass, is that a very good qualification? The ass is very humble. You load upon it tons of clothes, it will not protest. Very humble. The professor objected to Prabhupada's conclusions. His opinion was that the transcendental search should not be undertaken so wholeheartedly. He felt Prabhupada was putting himself forward egotistically as a perfect person and making claims on blind faith. Srila Prabhupada answered all these objections with reason, argument, and Shastric evidence. But whatever Srila Prabhupada advocated, the professor disliked, and whatever Prabhupada disliked, the professor would endorse. Sri Dayananda Maharaj, he asked if we are content just to purify ourselves, or if we also want to help the society. Prabhupada, no, you do not know what is the self, so how will you purify? You do not know what is the self. Can you say what is the self? Sri Dayananda Maharaj, he says it is possible that he could spend his whole life trying to find himself, and at the end of his life he might not find himself, but in the meanwhile he will not have helped society. Prabhupada, not only in one life you will not know yourself, but millions of lifetimes you will not be able to know unless you change your policy. Although it seemed futile, Prabhupada continued to offer the man spiritual life, defeating his speculative notions and giving him sound arguments for the necessity of self-realization. Prabhupada's disciples had presented the professor for an evening of discourse, and so Srila Prabhupada gave the professor what he gave everyone, the opportunity to hear about the absolute truth from a pure devotee. Prabhupada had done the same thing in New York City, in San Francisco, in Calcutta, in Bombay, in Africa, in London, wherever he went and to whomever he met. The professor in Caracas was particularly stubborn, but Prabhupada was tolerant, answering each argument until the talk grew quite lengthy. "Give him prasadam," Prabhupada finally said. The professor departed smiling. It was a great pleasure. Another night, the leaders of the Metaphysical Society of Caracas came. "From my point of view," their leader said, "you are repeating this Hare Krishna mantra over and over again, somewhat like hypnotism. For example, in some tribal rituals they chant different things." Prabhupada: "That is your opinion, but you are not an authority." Srila Prabhupada quoted from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that chanting the Lord's name is the activity of the Mahatmas, or great souls. In the Western Hemisphere, the man said, the supreme authority is Saint Germain. And he says we should chant, "I am." That is a quote from the Bible. Apparently, when they asked God who he is, God said, "I am that I am." Prabhupada replied that "I am" is not itself the name of God. Moreover, no one can claim to be God also simply by saying "I am." Prabhupada: when God says "I am" and I say "I am," there is a difference. I am particle "I am," and he is whole "I am." A millionaire says "I am," and his servant says "I am," but what are they saying? For the soul, it is all right to say "I am," but there is a difference between the particle and the whole. That is to be understood. When God says "I am," that means I am the whole. And when I say "I am," that means I am the particle. Therefore, we should understand that when I say "I am" and when God says "I am," they are different. The Metaphysical Society leader persisted. "When I say "I am," the man replied, "I don't mean in the sense of the lower self, but in the higher self. I understand that the essence of everyone is the same." Prabhupada: "That we admitted. God is spirit, and I am spirit. Both of them I. But God's power and your power are not equal. In the Bible, God said, 'Let there be creation,' and there was creation. But if you say, 'Let there be chapati,' there will be no chapati unless you work. You have to work for it." The members of the Metaphysical Society couldn't accept the worshipable chanting of the names of Krishna. "I always understood from Indian philosophy," the leader said, "that you cannot give God a name, because that would be limiting him." Prabhupada: "No, we don't give God a name, but God is named by his actions. Just like Krishna. Krishna means all-attractive. That is the quality of God, that he is all-attractive. Similarly, Allah means the great, so God is great. Therefore, he is called Allah. So, actually, God has no name, but according to his actions, he has names." Another night, the psychiatrists came. They also disagreed with Prabhupada. They thought he was claiming too much and criticizing too much. Prabhupada explained. Mental disease is there, basically because he is thinking he is the body. He gave the example of the driver and the car. If a man identifies with the damage done to his car, then that is mental disease. The man is actually different from his car. But he thinks that he has become damaged by the damage of the car. So if the psychiatrist informs him, "Why are you sorry? You are not the car," then the man is cured. So the defect of modern civilization is that he is not this body, but he does not know it. The psychiatrists objected, arguing that even if a doctor was looking for God, that did not mean he should stop trying to cure his patient's physical ailments with psychiatry. No, Prabhupada corrected. It is not that I am talking of God. I am talking of the constitutional position of the living being. Although Srila Prabhupada repeatedly hammered out the example of the driver in the car, the psychiatrists kept insisting, in effect, that it was the car that was important. But, Prabhupada insisted, the insanity is not of the car. The insanity is of the driver. So, when we feel the problems of humanity, it means the insanity of the soul, not of the body. To this, the psychiatrists replied that Prabhupada's points were in common with many philosophies. They said there were many different ways and different philosophies for passing the time of this temporary life. Prabhupada: so, you are interested only in the temporary life. Never mind, there may be disaster. The psychiatrists insisted that both body and spirit were important. As for the body, they felt responsibility for curing it through psychiatry. As for the soul, that was a speculative field in which one person's opinion was as good as another. Finally, after repeated attempts, Prabhupada made them admit the simplest truth. Prabhupada: just like the dead body, everything is present in the dead body. The machine is there. Now, somehow or other, you try to drive it, but you cannot. Psychiatrist, translated through Hridayananda Maharaj: the body cannot be driven because the spirit is gone. I admit that. Prabhupada: that means the driver is gone, so who is important, the body or the driver? Psychiatrist: both are important. Prabhupada: both are there, but comparatively which is more important? Psychiatrist: the spirit is. But then, a woman psychiatrist spoke, suggesting that Srila Prabhupada was being overly critical of society without a specific solution. Again, Srila Prabhupada referred to the car and the driver. When Prabhupada said that no educational department was giving clear information of the prime factor, the car's driver, she said he was a radical, because many groups were doing just that, and she herself had studied theology for 2 years in college. As on previous nights, the talk was tense, the guests unyielding in their refusal to accept the most elementary aspects of transcendental science. Srila Prabhupada was offering them instruction in Krishna consciousness, but he would not compromise. Srila Prabhupada intended to initiate many Venezuelan devotees, but there was a controversy over who was eligible. Those first initiates who had been in the movement for a year were expecting Brahmin initiation from him during his visit. But after the candidates had failed both a written and an oral exam on Krishna-conscious philosophy, the temple leaders decided the devotees weren't qualified for second initiation at this time. When a lively discussion of the upcoming initiations occurred outside Prabhupada's door, Prabhupada came out into the hall. The devotees explained the situation, and he asked the temple president the devotees' qualifications. Well, Prabhupada, they go out on Sankirtan every day. Then why don't you give them your mercy, Prabhupada said. Prabhupada was teaching his leaders what it meant. It didn't mean being lenient or slack or allowing a devotee to break the rules and say it was all right, but it meant seeing the good the devotees were doing. Prabhupada said that in Kali Yuga, if you see a spark of inclination to spiritual life in someone, then you have to fan it. And it is not sufficient either just to turn that spark into a small flame, but the devotee has to keep working with the conditioned soul until the flame is strong and going on its own. Prabhupada could understand that the devotees wanted to be initiated in his personal presence. It was not expected that he would come back. So he had asked that they be given mercy. They were distributing his books every day on Sankirtan. Therefore they were extensions of their magnanimous spiritual master. So why not give them mercy? Another controversy arose over the candidates for sannyas. This time, Srila Prabhupada took the conservative position. Hridayananda Maharaj introduced Jagadjivana and Mahavira to Srila Prabhupada as candidates for taking the renounced order. Jagadjivana. Srila Prabhupada began methodically to defeat all our arguments. He gave the argument that Lord Chaitanya said sannyas was not recommended in this age. I said, "But Prabhupada, you said in your books that that applies to Mayavadi sannyas." Prabhupada's main argument was, "If you don't have to take the risk, why take it?" He gave the names of sannyasis who had fallen down. The devotee with me then presented the argument that Lord Chaitanya had taken sannyas in order to help the people, so that they would respect him. On hearing that, Srila Prabhupada turned to Hridayananda Maharaj and laughed slightly. "All he wants is fame," he said. "He's interested only in fame." By this time I had forgotten that I even wanted to take sannyas. I was completely satisfied just being there with Srila Prabhupada, and I said to him in a fit of devotion, "Actually, I wanted to take sannyas, but if I could just be your servant, this is enough." In his initiation lecture, Prabhupada stressed Sravanam, or hearing about Krishna, as the most important item in devotional service. "All these devotees present here," he said, "they are not Indians. I have not brought them from India, neither have I bribed them, but by hearing only, they are now coming to God consciousness and becoming devotees. Therefore, this Shravanam, or hearing, is very, very important. So, all you ladies and gentlemen present here, take advantage of hearing about God from this institution, and you also will become God conscious." Prabhupada compared Krishna to fire. To enter that state of fire, one needs a high temperature, he said. One can transform wood into fire, but if he throws water on the wood, then he cannot ignite it nicely. Prabhupada compared sinful activities to wet wood. They prevent one from entering the fire of Krishna consciousness. Those who are habituated to all these sins, Prabhupada said, namely illicit sex, meat-eating, intoxication, and gambling. To give up these habits may be a little painful in the beginning, but if you practice and pray to Krishna, he will help. It is not difficult to give up these habits. As soon as you give up this wetting process, this sinful life, then immediately you become 50% purified to approach God. Then, by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, you make further, more progress. And when you are completely free from all sinful reaction, then you will understand God and love Him. As in Mexico, Srila Prabhupada began using Spanish phrases in Caracas. When on a morning walk, a woman greeted them, saying Buenos dias, Prabhupada asked what it meant. A few minutes later, as a group of joggers approached, Prabhupada called out, Buenos dias, and they replied, Buenos dias. On several occasions, he used the Spanish words for soul, alma, and super alma. One evening, Hridayananda Maharaj entered Srila Prabhupada's room and found him alone, carefully reading the Spanish edition of the Krishna book. Krishna, la suprema personalidad de Dios. Srila Prabhupada, Hridayananda Maharaj exclaimed, "You're reading in Spanish." Prabhupada smiled and said, "For Krishna you can do anything." After a lecture in the temple, a woman who frequently attended expressed her doubt to Prabhupada, Hridayananda Maharaj. She says that at the temple there is much Maya, and that the people who live in the temple are faulty. Prabhupada: And where there is no Maya? Tell me a place where there is no Maya. We shall go there. No. In the temple there is no Maya, because I am in Maya. I am thinking the temple is Maya. Let us consider the Bhagavad Gita. Mam evaye prapadyante mayam etang tarantite. For anyone who surrenders to me, he overcomes the influence of Maya. Therefore, those who are living in the temple are not in Maya. It was the last morning. Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasan, ready to leave for the airport. Beside him on the floor sat his orange travel bag. He spoke his last words, translated by Hridayananda Maharaj. So I thank you very much for your kindly receiving me in this temple, and I was very happy. My request is that you continue your devotional service very faithfully and rigidly. Then in this life you will be able to see Krishna face to face. That is a fact. So you follow the advice as given by Rupa Goswami. Utsaha. The first thing is enthusiasm that I must see Krishna. You are seeing Krishna. The deity of Krishna and Krishna are not different. But even personally you can see. Simply we have to continue the enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means to take things very seriously. Utsahad, dhairyat, and patiently. We are determined to go back to home, back to Godhead. So we should patiently follow the rules and regulations. So these are the 6 principles: enthusiasm and firm determination, and patience, and executing the regulative principles. Tat tat karma pravartanat, and sato vritehe means behavior must be very honestly, no hypocrisy. Tat tat karma pravritanat, sadhu sangha. And in the association of devotees. If you follow these 6 principles, namely enthusiasm, determination, patience, and executing the regulative principles, and keep yourself honest and in the association of devotees, if you follow these 6 principles, then your success is sure. So these are the 6 positive principles. Shadbir Bhakti Parsiddhyati. By following these 6 principles, success is assured. Similarly, there are opposite number. What is that? Atyahara, eating too much. Atyahara, prayasa, prajalpa, talking nonsense. Gossiping, some subject matter which has no concern with Krishna consciousness. We are accustomed to do that. We should avoid it. Atyaharaha, prayasascha, prajalpo, niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means simply making a show of the rules and regulations, but not actually realizing them. And lolyam, to become very greedy. And jana sangascha, meaning mixing with persons who are not devotees. These 6 things should be avoided, and the first things should be followed. Then your success in devotional service is sure. Prajalpa, unnecessary gossiping, just like people are wasting time taking one newspaper and talking for hours. These things should be avoided. And to associate with non-devotees and greediness, these things should be avoided. Atyaharaha prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana sangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. If you indulge in these 6 items, then your devotional service will be finished. And the first 6 principles means utsahad, nishchayad, dhairyat tat tat karma pravartanat, sadhu sangat sato, vritehe shadbir bhakti prasidhyati. By these 6 principles you will advance, and by the other 6 principles you will fall down. So, under the guidance of your leaders in this temple, especially Hridayananda Maharaj, you follow. One life, just take a little trouble. It is not trouble. It is a very happy life. But because we are accustomed to these material habits, we think it is trouble. No, it is not trouble. It is very pleasing. Susukang kartum avyayam. To execute devotional service is very pleasing. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.